All right, we're looking at a 95 F-150 here. The complaint is the left wheel starts smoking and the truck won't go over like 30 miles an hour. You know, the left front caliper is basically dragging. I actually have a history with this truck. Probably about a year and a half ago, she had called me and said that she had no brake pedal and she wanted me to come over and take it out. And anyway, I get over there. Come to find out, her husband had tried to put brakes on it, and for whatever reason, the story got weirder and weirder as it went on. But make a long story short, I was over there trying to bleed it out. I had my power bleeder over there, and a small compressor, whatever. Couldn't get him to bleed out. I realized that the bleeder was you know, instead of being low, it was up high. I realized that they had, at some point, taken the calipers off because they weren't new calipers and put them on the wrong side of the truck. So as soon as I realized that, I'd switch them around, bled it out, and come to find out, after I did all that, she said, yes, my husband soaked the calipers in kerosene or gasoline, something like that, to clean them up, and that's why they were off the truck completely. And I've never heard of that. I wouldn't do that. You have seals inside your calipers, and just doesn't seem like a good idea to soak it in gas or kerosene or whatever. But anyway, here we are, about a year and a half later, and this caliper is sticking on this side. So we're just gonna make a short video on how to change the caliper out and what I do. There's a couple different ways to do it as far as bleeding and all that. I'll kind of go over that, but anyway, that's the backstory on this truck. And I would change both calipers, but I know that she's not going to want to do that. They're just going to want to change the one on this side. So what we're just going to do is change this one for now, and put new pads on the front, and bleed it out and give it back. So I've dealt with this truck enough to know that she's not going to want to put calipers on both sides if the other side's okay right now. So that is what it is. I'll do what they want, and we'll get this up in the air and take the wheel off. And the only reason I'm even making this video is because I did a video on this truck with wheel bearings, and it's doing pretty good. People ask questions on it, and figure I'll do one here. There's still a lot of these trucks on the road this generation, so we'll do one here. This is a two-wheel drive, but it should be the same for four-wheel drive. And we'll change the caliper out on it, and pretty easy, pretty straightforward. We'll get it done and get this thing back on the road. Alright, the first thing I like to do whenever I'm changing a caliper, doing some kind of hydraulic, open the system up, is I'll get one of these. This is actually, I've had this probably 25 years or 30 years. Got this at CarQuest a long time ago. And all this does is go over the line, you put the line here, and then just turn this down, and it clamps the line so that the fluid can't escape. And the reason we do that is we're going to take this caliper off, and we don't want the master cylinder going dry, because if that goes dry, then we're looking at possibly bits bleeding that and bleeding the whole system out. We don't want to do all that. Normally, if we're just going to change this caliper, this is really all we should have to bleed. If you block this off and don't allow fluid to drain out, you know you're going to get some that's obviously from here to there, and then there's fluid in this caliper. But if you don't allow the master cylinder to go low, or you know, you really only have to bleed this caliper more than likely when we go to bleed it. But this is where the bleeder's at. This is what I was saying earlier. The bleeder's up here, and that's where it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be at the highest point. And actually, this caliper will bolt on the other side. And what it does is it puts the bleeder down here, and then there's no way to bleed the fluid because it's too low. So that's what happened to me. And I didn't realize it at first because she never told me that the calipers were completely off. She just told me that her husband did a brake job on it, and then he couldn't get brake pedal again. And I assumed maybe master cylinder or maybe something else was bad. and was causing the problem. I didn't know that. They never told me. They took these completely off and soaked them in either gas or kerosene. I can't remember what they said, and I didn't know that. I never even heard of that before. I mean, I've heard of soaking parts in gas or whatever to clean it, but not a caliper. You know, this has rubber seals in the piston and all that. It's not good for it. So anyway, that's history. And I guess this truck's not been driven very much. I guess they don't drive it very much. The brake pads still look like they're brand new. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and take, because I got this blocked off, I'm going to go ahead and take this line off first, and then we'll take these 2 bolts off and pull this off and get the new part, and then we'll start putting it back together. But it's pretty straightforward. Basically, if you haven't done it before, the biggest trick is, not really a trick, but block off your line. Now, if you don't have one of these blockers, you can get them. I think Harbor Freight sells them real cheap. They don't look the same as this, but they work the same. Actually, look. This is the one that Harbor Freight sells. They sell them in a kit. I think 3 or 4 in a kit, and it's the same thing. I use it. You know, I use these to block off heater hoses or whatever I'm working on, brake lines, and the Harbor Freight. They're not a sponsor or anything, but they sell 3 different sizes. You know, they got a real big one and then a small, medium size, and there's a smaller one. And I basically use these block off brake lines, hoses, whatever you're trying to block off. Now, if you don't have any of that and you don't want to spend the money on that, you could use a pair of vice grips on them. The only thing I would do if you're going to do that, I would not put the vice grip directly on the hose. I would get some kind of pad in between the metal part of the vice grip and your hose, and I wouldn't clamp too hard on it. You only need to clamp a little bit. I really don't recommend that, but if you're in a pinch and that's what you want to do, you can use a pair of vice grips. But I would put something between the actual jaw of the vice grip and the rubber hose so you don't damage the hose. So, and then if you don't have anything and don't want to do that at all, you could take this off, put the new one on, and then take this off last and switch it over before you lose all your fluid. You know, that's a possibility too. I don't like doing that just because I don't want to be rushed, and you don't want to forget one of the washers or something like that. And I know it seems like I'm rambling on, but like I said, I make these videos mainly for people that want to do these jobs themselves. So it may seem basic to you to speak about these certain things, but someone that just does brake pads here and there and wants to change their own caliper may not know about all this, so that's why I go over it. So I know people complain sometimes that I talk too much, but you know, I make these videos mainly for people that trying to save some money and want to do some of these jobs on their own. So this is the information that I would want if I was doing something like this. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and break this loose. I think that looks like a 15, and then we'll get to this. Now you have your little washer here, and then there should be, oh, it fell off in the pan already. So what you're going to have is you know, your bolt going through. You're going to have a washer on this side. It's going to go through the line, and then a washer on the other side. It's going to be made up against this. So the new caliper should come with new washers, so you don't have to. Shouldn't have to worry about saving them or anything. I got a whole box of them that I saved. And then you got the 2 14mm bolts on the back that hold the caliper to the steering knuckle here. It's a little tight. You get behind, you're going to lose a lot of fluid out of here. And there will be a core on these, which means you'll have to take it back to, you have to take this back to the auto parts store. They'll probably charge you $40 or $50, believe it or not, for a core on this. So go ahead and drain it all out as much as you can before you give it back to them. That's pretty much it. These brake pads still look almost brand new, so I don't think I'm even going to change those. I think I'm just going to leave it like it is. Just get her a caliper, get her back on the road. Like I said, I know this customer pretty good, and they're not going to want to put a bunch of new stuff on here. So anyway, this is what the caliper looks like. You got your bleeder screw up here. So I'm going to go get one real quick, and we'll put it back on. I'll show you how to bleed it. There's a couple different ways. I mean, there's a way I do it, which is I use a power bleeder, but I'll show you how to do it manually too. So now with this line kink blocked off, with my blocker right here, you can see I'm not losing any fluid, so that's good. And I guess that's it. I'll pick it back up. Alright, so I went and got a new caliper for it. It does come with the new bolt, new washers. Comes with the new bolts for the bracket. And the core on it was $25 at O'Reilly, so they will charge you if you don't bring the old one back. You can go buy it and then take the old one back later, and they'll give you the money back if you don't know how the core works. But basically, they take your old one and rebuild it, send it back to the company, and they rebuild them. So that's why they want the cores back. And the more valuable it is to them, the more they'll charge you for the core. These being a pretty common Ford here, it's only $25. The last one I had, a core on, was $45. So anyway, we're just going to go ahead and set this on there. And this has already been greased, so we're not going to worry about greasing them. And we're just going to go ahead and start these bolts back here. And normally I would put new brake pads on, but these are basically new. And from what I understand, it just started doing this, so it's not like she drove it for weeks on end with this issue. And like I said before, you got to do what the customer wants you to do. This isn't like a safety issue or anything. It's just if it was my truck, I'd probably change both of them, put new pads on and be done with it. But it's not my truck, and I'm going to do what she wants me to do with it, as long as it's safe. And of course, the new bolts are a different size. So let me get the right size real quick. But if you're doing this job yourself, I definitely recommend doing both of them. I actually just had a Jeep. The guy, or at some point, had one done on the passenger side, and then came to me because the driver's side was he tried to do brakes on his own. He couldn't push the cylinder back, and anyway, I went ahead and changed the caliper for him. But if they would have just changed both of them at the same time, he wouldn't have had that issue. So it's better just to change them both. They're not super expensive. And right there, my ratchet kind of skipped a little bit, so I'm going to go ahead and it's much worse on putting on than it is taking off. I'm going to go ahead and tighten these. Alright, now we got the bolt for the line with the two washers. We're going to take one washer off. Like I said, I know this is basic, but you've never done one. So we'll take the one washer off. Make sure both the washers are off of your this one still has a washer on here. Make sure they're both off their line. You don't want to double. I got a screwdriver, I'll be right back. You don't want to have double washers on there. Alright, so I just took a screwdriver and kind of popped that off. You know, if it's a gold color, then it's probably still on there. Just double check your line and make sure that both your washers are off. And again, I know this is self-explanatory, but you got the bolt, washer, line, washer, and then we'll put this on the caliper and tighten it up. Alright, so once you got this tight, now on these here, you want to get them tight, but you don't want to just go crazy on it because you can snap this bolt off. I've seen it before. People tighten these too tight and then they snap right off into the caliper. But you do want them tight because if they're just snug or whatever, they can leak brake fluid, so you don't want to start losing brake fluid while you're driving. Now, you can go ahead and take whatever you had blocking your line off. At this point, I'm going to go ahead, what I normally do is I take whatever I have blocking the line off, I put a pan under there, and then I'm going to go ahead and open this bleeder valve, looks like a 10 millimeter, and I'll let it gravity bleed, and once the fluid starts coming out of here, then I'll go ahead and check the master cylinder. Actually, you can check the master cylinder now, would be a good thing. And then which I can see it's full. So I'm going to go ahead and gravity bleed it. I'm going to go ahead and open this up, let it gravity bleed until, well, of course it's not 10 millimeter. Look like a 10 mil. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up and wait a few minutes. Maybe it is 10 mil. Let it gravity bleed, and then once it starts dripping out, I'll close it, and then we'll get the power bleeder out, and I'll go over how to do it that way or the other way. Alright, so actually that was a 3/8. You can see here, it's starting to drip down in the pan. So we're going to go ahead and close it up. It's basically called gravity bleeding. I always do that before I power bleed it, just to get the cylinder, the caliper full of fluid, and have the line flowing and everything before I power bleed it. Now I'll go over 2 different ways in case you don't have a power bleeder on how to bleed it. So I'm going to get my hose set up and then we'll go over the 2 different ways. Alright, so I got the bleeder open a little bit and I got a line going here. And there's actually a couple different ways. If you have a Mighty Vac, a hand pump, they have a container that goes in between the line that catches the brake fluid before it gets to the pump. And that is, you can do it by hand where you just pump it and that'll pull the fluid out of here and all the air. This is a power bleeder, and it's basically the same thing as a hand pump except that it uses compressed air, so you're not sitting here pumping it. And all the fluid, instead of there on a hand bleeder, there would be a container in the middle of this line to catch the fluid. On this, the actual container catches the fluid, so there's nothing in between it. This goes directly to your caliper. Hook it up to compressed air here, and just press the button, and you're just going to draw all the fluid and air out of it into this and bleed it that way. The other way, if you don't have a Mighty Vac or one of these power bleeders, is you can do it by hand or manually. You're going to need someone else with you, and what they do is they sit in the car, you have this closed, they pump the brakes 3 to 4 or 5 times, they hold the brake, you open this up, the fluid goes out, the air goes out, and before they let off, the pedal should go to the floor, they hold it there, you close it before they let off the brake. Once you close this, they let off, and then they pump it again 3 or 4 times. You open it, you should see bubbles and air and fluid come out. Pedal should go to the floor. Once it goes to the floor, you close it, and you repeat that procedure 3 or 4 times, and that should be good enough to get rid of all the air in the system. I use a power bleeder because I do this all the time, almost every day, and I don't have anybody here with me, so I work alone. So this is a great alternative, and I think it works better too. It's a lot quicker. It's great for doing clutches, anything hydraulic. This is great for. But there is, if you don't want to invest in the tools, there is ways to do it without that, and that's the old-fashioned. Get a buddy to sit in the car, girlfriend, wife, whatever, and have them pump it, and then you work the bleeder out here. So anyway, that's about all. And then of course, once you're done bleeding it, make sure you check your master cylinder. You don't want your master cylinder to ever go dry during this operation, no matter which way you do it. And that's about it. So I'm sure people will go off on me for not changing both, or not changing pads, or not changing every single thing on the system. But I do what the customer tells me to do. This is not unsafe. The pads are still in good shape, and she's just not going to pay for 2 calipers. So there's really nothing technically wrong with that. If the other caliper's working, that one may last the life of this truck, who knows. But if it was my truck, I would probably change both. But and she may be in here a week later changing the right one, but it may not, you know, it could last forever too, so who knows. So, you know, I just know how the comments go, and yes, I know you should change both at the same time, and probably brake hoses. Now, this does have new brake hoses on it, so anyway, it is what it is. This is just a video to show you how to change your caliper and how to bleed it after you're done. And some people will say you got to bleed the whole system, start at the rear and work your way up, but we didn't get any air back there, and we didn't get any air really from here to there. That's the only place we would have got air. We blocked it off, so there's really no need to bleed anything else. We'll get a good, as soon as I bleed this out, we'll get a good pedal and it'll be good to go. So that's it for front caliper, F-150 95 vintage. Hopefully you enjoyed it, or it helped you in some way, and we'll see you on the next one. Have a good day, and as always, God bless.